get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
Happy Father's Day to all Lions fans and Kneecaps Nation. This is the Father's Day edition of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progar, that's me. Happy to be joined, as always, by Phil Byrne himself. Phil, I know you're not a father to any human beings out there, but happy Father's Day to you, and hope it was a good weekend for you.
Yeah, awesome weekend. And yeah, Vince, right back at you. Although you got your little fur baby Perry out there, that I guess you can say you're technically the dad of. So
sure, absolutely. So
of course we know Perry is part of Kneecaps Nation as well.
He sure is. He's the 4-legged mascot. I mean, we can't have Rory be our mascot because he's already the mascot for the Detroit Lions. So you can't ask him to perform double duty or anything like that. But Perry, a big part of the Kneecaps for Breakfast enterprise. Just the same, though, Phil, I kind of want to get things started on a little bit of a lighter-hearted note before we get into some more harder-hitting, hard news here from this past week. So as we said, it is Father's Day. And, Phil, what I want to know is you and your dad Randy, a great guy, great follower and supporter of all things Detroit Lions and Kneecaps for Breakfast and whatnot. What are some of the more profound, I don't want to get into necessarily fond because the Lions haven't given us a whole lot of fond memories over the years, but what is a profound memory or two that you and your dad share when it comes to the Lions over the years?
Well, it's always one of those ones that I remember. I mean, we had season tickets going back to the Silverdome back when I was really young. Was able to see Barry Sanders run for the Lions. The Barry chants. They kind of had like these white pom-poms they used to have back in the Silverdome. I don't remember because I would have been way too young, but like pretty much from like 96 on, I think I want to say I kind of remember. So the Lions offense really started to pick up, in some of those years. For me, I was living out of state for, I don't know, 4.5 years or something like that. And always talk to my dad after every Lions game. That is kind of one of the things that we will always talk about, even like Father's Day weekend, still talking about the Lions. And, we were talking about some of the moves that we'll get into on the show earlier today when I was able to see him. 2 games stick out for me as huge memories. Well, I'll go 3 actually. Obviously the Lions-Rams playoff game, being there in attendance and watching that with him. That was a really special one, and one that I'm going to remember for a very, very long time. 2 games going back to when we had season tickets from yesteryear. The first one is kind of an unusual game. This would have been in the Silverdome, one of the, I think it was maybe the second to last year. It was, I think, the 99 season or 2000. Well, I guess Ford Field was in 2002. So it was the year that the Rams ended up winning the Super Bowl, and the Lions beat the Rams that year at the Silverdome. Kurt Warner, and that whole team came in, and
so that would have been the year before they came back to the Silverdome and skunked them on Monday Night Football, correct?
Correct. So the Rams at this point in time they didn't have the gold in their uniforms yet. So it was the yellow and blue that they had for decades at that point. And the Lions won. The Lions won. Gus Frerotte was the quarterback. And what I remember about this game and being so unique was the Lions were, I don't think, in a position to win the division. I think either Green Bay or Minnesota that year was going to win the division. But it was for wild card season. The Lions eventually got into the playoffs, lost to Washington in the wild card round on the road. But the way that they came back and won this game, we had actually, and we had season tickets up in the bowels of the Silverdome. So if you remember anything about the Silverdome, for those of you who were fortunate enough to have gone to games there, very, very tall structure, right? So it really wasn't built into the ground. It was really from the ground up. So when you're in that upper level, you have probably 6 or 7 flights of stairs to make it up to that top third row. Anyways, we're leaving. We're in the staircase and just heard a loud roar. Well, evidently the Lions went for it on fourth down. We left at like third down. So, and I think there was a timeout or something going on. The Lions converted this fourth down and ended up setting up Jason Hanson for a kick. I think to either take the lead or something like that. There was like a minute and some change left. Ended up beating the Rams. And I'd love to watch a replay of that game to see how it went down. That was an awesome thing. And being with my dad and like racing back up the stairs, to see if we could watch it. That was great. And then the very first home game against the Green Bay Packers in Ford Field. I think this was the Joey Harrington year, 2002. And just being amazed that this was where the Lions were going to play. This was their home. And everything new that came with the new stadium was not a great team by any stretch of the imagination, but they pulled out the win against Green Bay. Brett Favre was the quarterback that year for Green Bay. And it was just a really, really special atmosphere and game to be part of, watching those. So those are 3 games that sticks out that, I remember watching with my dad, and not to go too much longer in it because I want to kind of toss this back to you, Vince, as well. But it's just part of the dialogue that I've always had with my dad, just talking about the Lions and
No,
football
absolutely.
and
And
stuff.
that's what's great
Yeah.
about how things have evolved into more of a winning franchise this last little bit, because it's really gone a long way to connect the different generations of Lions fans, because you're able to, whether it's a father or a grandfather or a uncle or even a neighbor or a friend or something like that, somebody who has been there in the trenches as a fan, just like you have for an even longer period of time than what you've had to go through, and to be able to have that connection for them to experience what you're experiencing right alongside you. I think that's really cool, and I think that's what's made this last couple of years with
Yeah.
the run towards the playoffs 2 years ago and then the run into the playoffs up through the NFC Championship game last year has been really, really cool. And I think we're all kind of on this big roller coaster ride together, all the
Mm-hmm.
generations of Lions fans. And I think the ride is, we're only just beginning. At least that's what I'm tricking my brain into believing, that we're just getting started here for this level of
Yeah.
sustained success. But we'll see how it goes from here. But I don't really have a whole lot to report as far as the connection with my own dad. He wasn't ever the biggest Lions fan. He was always more of the fair weathered type. If anything,
Mm.
he and I always would connect with the Detroit Pistons and their
Okay.
years of success. My dad was always a huge basketball fan, so he and I would always bond over the Pistons, and he and I would take rides up to the Palace back when that was still a thing, and back when the going to work Pistons were in their zenith and everything like that. And it's come to a point now where they're so bad that it's not worth my time, or it's not worth my dad's time or anything like that. Otherwise, I'm sure we'd still share that level of connection. But just goes to show everybody's got their own thing, right?
If we do have any Pistons fans listening to this, want to shout out the Pistons YouTube channel right now. We actually just hit the 20-year mark of the 2004 championship team. They
God, that makes
have
me feel
the
old.
they have the
20
Game
years.
5 broadcast from ABC up on their YouTube channel. Caught like the first 10 minutes
With
of it.
Al Michaels and Doc Rivers on the call, I believe.
Al Michaels, Doc Rivers, Stuart Scott. Obviously, you had Kobe on the Lakers team.
Yep.
The atmosphere that the Palace had was awesome and electric. Little Caesars Arena is a awesome venue and is such a cool part of the downtown scene in Detroit. But listen, I've driven past the demolished Palace so many times since living out in the Rochester area, and I wish they could have done something with it because of the memories that we as Pistons fans, also as Lions fans, have that hey, the Pistons were actually in the Silverdome at one point in time before the Palace of Auburn Hills as well. Now we don't have either structure. The Silverdome is an Amazon shipping facility, and last I checked, the Palace is just a parking lot, I think, for a car dealership to park some cars out there.
Some
It's
overflow or
yeah,
recalled automobiles or something like that. Who knows? But
yeah.
definitely not what it used to be. No doubt about it. But
But first time I've checked out the Pistons YouTube channel with any sort of video in however many years. But do yourself a favor if you are a Pistons fan out there, and you can watch that game in its entirety.
I'll probably do that myself tonight. Even who knows? But I wanted to get things rolling tonight on more of a positive note because there are some not so positive things that we do want to touch on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vincentville along with you as always. So let's start with the bad news, I guess. So now former Lion Isaiah Buggs getting in some trouble with the law in the last day or so. According to the Tuscaloosa County police blotter, he was arrested on a domestic violence and burglary charge and was booked into Tuscaloosa County Jail. He was a member of the Crimson Tide back in the day, so hence the connection to Tuscaloosa. He was held on a $5,000 bond. It was unclear as of the time we are recording this pod whether he had been released from police custody. Now, you might be wondering, well, guys, you're a little bit late on reporting that he's in some trouble with the law. Well, no, he's just in trouble with the law another time because you may remember that just a couple of weeks back, he turned himself into the same county jail on misdemeanor animal cruelty charges, which he vehemently denied up and down that he had anything to do with and that the dogs weren't even his and yada, yada, yada. But nonetheless, Phil, this is the second time in a month that Isaiah Buggs has gotten caught up in some legal trouble. Now, you may recall that over the course of last year, particularly early on in the opening night Kansas City game, let's say, inactive, or as they say in some other sports,
Yeah.
a healthy scratch coach's decision. It was pretty apparent as the year went on that he wasn't going to fit into the Lions' plans long term. Parted ways with him. Now he is on the Kansas City Chiefs organization. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't sound like he's long for things down there in Kansas City. But Phil, what do you think? Is this a bullet that may have been dodged by the Lions, not choosing to re-sign him, or you think that this is something that we may still miss what he brings to the table?
Yeah, I think this is 100% a situation where the Lions dodged a bullet. I don't think they're going to miss him really in the slightest with the addition of DJ Reader. Um, his I don't even want to say technique, but like he was a pretty good compliment to Lee McNeil. Like I want to give him credit in that regard.
Well, I loved
But
seeing him play out there, and I was bummed to see that he was a healthy
yeah,
scratch for those few games. It's like we could really use him out here right
hmm
now.
and these are clearly two off the field situations that have happened. But as we're kind of talking more on the field, there seemed to be something missing that we weren't seeing from games because for the most part, I thought that he was a pretty maybe not impactful, but like he made his presence known out there when he was actually playing. And you're wondering, like, well, what the heck? Why is he basically a healthy scratch? Why is he, on the inactive list on a game day? And I think some of it had to come to effort, or the coaches were just not seeing everything that was there. Obviously, with the off the field situations like this in the last couple of weeks, not a great sign. So, um, I don't think Kansas City saw these type of incidents coming. When they signed him, they were looking more at on the field kind of techniques and what he was bringing to the table in that regard. Um, but now, when you have these things kind of pile up, you're probably looking at a couple games getting suspended, and again, talking about not being on the field.
And it's one of those things where you almost kind of thought that, okay, maybe this is the Lions setting themselves up for some success here because, as we all know, Brad Holmes has an affinity for players out of the University of Alabama. So you thought maybe this was a big time Brad Holmes type. It just didn't seem to work out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It just, there was something not quite there. The whole we never saw the full picture, right? And sometimes it's those things, those disciplinary actions, whether things are reported or they're not reported, that we as fans do not get to see. The beat writers do not get to see. It's disciplinary actions handled behind closed doors or on the practice field in non-media sessions. And um, you know, I think the Lions, we all knew that the defensive line, specifically that defensive tackle room, needed some veteran presence. And, I think Aleem McNeil had a really emerging year last year. But I feel much more confident having DJ Reader in the room, being that veteran presence as opposed to Bugs at this point.
Well, that's just it. You really have to be mindful of who you are exposing your rookies and your young players to. And if you're having guys around that are, whether it's directly or indirectly, showing these guys bad examples or setting a bad example for the young guys, that's not something you want around your organization.
No, no, it's really not. And I think there are so many impressionable guys. You mentioned the Alabama connection. And you think about the goodwill that Terry and Arnold, has built up, being an Alabama kid. And, there's actually a really cool draft day documentary that is out. I think Roku. Well, I saw it on Roku, but that the NFL presented, and it's got the whole part where Terry and Arnold gets drafted, and he turns around, on the stage, in front of everyone in Detroit, and it's an awesome scene, but you can't help to think, but if he had a bad influence in the room or something, if we still had Bugs, that you know that's something that you just don't want to have, especially because we also had Sutton on this team, last year, and then you start getting into the, uh, you know, are we truly a team that's looking at character and everything if we're bringing guys in? But those two guys aren't on the team anymore. They both have off the field incidents, and you know, oddly enough, Sutton going to Pittsburgh is, or rumored to be going to Pittsburgh is kind of a unique story in its own right, I guess.
It seems like that tracks a little bit just for the familiarity aspect for both sides. Not a whole lot of adjustment to be had between Pittsburgh or Cam Sutton himself. But again, that's somebody else's problem. Isaiah Buggs is somebody else's problem. And it's kind of been no secret over the years that the Lions really have been interested in bringing in people with any type of questionable character or behavioral patterns. But once again, the Lions standing true to who they are, taking a hardline stance against both Cam Sutton and against Isaiah Buggs, parting ways with them at really the first hint that anything was going down with either one of those guys. And again, moving forward with both those individuals and their legal issues moving forward, that's something that the Lions will not have to partake in whatsoever. Speaking of Alabama guys, you just mentioned Terrion Arnold a couple minutes ago, Phil. He did sign his rookie deal just, I believe, a couple of days ago. So the Lions' entire draft class is going to be signed for this upcoming year. So no holdouts into training camp, no drama like that. Everybody's signed and good to go.
Love to see it. Love to see it. And the last thing that a guy like Tyrion Arnold, who we want to see contribute right away, we have high expectations of, we want to see his impact in training camp and in preseason, needs as an extended, holdouts, or, they can't find the terms or anything like that. And sometimes you do run into that when you see guys' draft value slip a little bit, and then, maybe they weren't taken at the slot that they want, and they're still trying to get the value at where they were at. So thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. We've gotten him signed with, and again, this is Brad Holmes in the front office being proactive, trying to get things done, trying to get ahead of the game, and not have this impact, the early learning curve that always, regardless of they played at Alabama, Michigan, any, top program like that, rookies always do hit some wall later on in the season. But truly through training camp and preseason, it's all about playbook, getting the reps, getting comfortable with the team, and becoming a pro.
And there is another big Lions story from this past week that I do want to get into, but there was something else that I had on my mind that I wanted to slide into
Yeah.
the end of the show, but I feel like it makes more sense to bring it up right here. So we talked about how nice it is that the Lions don't have the contractual drama. They took care of all of their rookies in a timely manner. They took care of all the guys on the offensive side of the ball that they really needed to get taken care of with not a whole lot of fanfare or drama or what are they going to do and when are they going to do it associated with it. I want to take a look into what's going on down in Cincinnati. You finally got T. Higgins to, after all this time, finally sign the franchise tag. So he was a complete no call, no show the entire offseason program. Finally, on Saturday, signs his franchise tag. So he'll make $28 million this season as
Yeah.
the number 2 receiver. And now you got Jamar Chase barking that he wants a contract extension. So something's going to happen with Higgins, whether it's a long term extension or it's a trade before the trade deadline or just an outright thanks for your time and troubles. And they're going to have to do something with Jamar Chase here pretty soon as well. This is the first year that he's eligible for an extension. Seems like a big mess down there, especially with all the money that you have allocated to Joe Burrow being the quarterback, to have no clear cut plan for what you're going to do with his top 2 weapons. It just goes to show how different things can be in other franchises.
Yeah, it really can. And one of the impacts that all these moves, especially on the offensive side of the ball, will have is you have to keep replenishing when it comes to your defense as well. And um, Cincinnati, in the past, they have been characterized as a cheap organization. A lot of the times they don't have the scouting resources as some of these other schools. So more than anything else with Cincinnati, you see them a lot of times going for players from big programs. They don't like to take a lot of chances on guys from mid majors or, the FCS level or anything like that. You just look at the guys that you just mentioned. Um, you got, you know, LSU and you've got Clemson, in the picture, and when those guys were drafted, I think they were all coming off of at least playoff appearances too. So, um,
And both of them
something,
had national championship rings at some point in their careers. So, of course, they
yeah.
were on the biggest stage and they had everybody rounding up, telling them how great they are and this and that and the other.
So you're going to have Brandon Ayuk probably get a deal with San Francisco. I know Debo, I think, might have to get one as well. I'm not sure where we stand with Debo, but the point being
I
is
think
that
Debo might still be a year away,
might be a year away. Okay.
but Ayuk is ready to roll right now, and he's looking for big bucks.
To me, and I know he's been a little injured, but Jamar Chase is the guy. If I was running that organization, that I would give the money to. He's a couple years younger than T. Higgins. Um,
Higher upside.
I would not make T. Higgins the highest paid receiver in the NFL. I think he's an awesome receiver, but let him go be, the number 1 receiver for. Um, I was
The
just
New
trying to
York
think of
Giants.
the Bills or something.
Yeah.
Like he can go get paid somewhere else. If I'm Cincinnati, I get the big contracts done with Burrow and Chase, and you got to invest in that defense. You are playing in the AFC, and until some team can put up some good combination of defense to go along with offense, you're going to be playing from behind from Patrick Mahomes and company. Is so long as Kelsey is still there, that's always going to be a threat and something you're going to have to contend with.
And that just goes to show that the way the Lions timed it with the extension for Amon-Ra St. Brown, once you start seeing more and more extensions handed out to these receivers, it's going to look like the Lions got a bargain with St. Brown once more and more deals start to get done.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the timing with all of it too, the draft coming in, getting those deals done, allowing them the opportunity to really feel embraced by the community when everyone was in downtown for the draft. Awesome, awesome timing. And it just seems like, again, this front office has it together and they know what they're doing. It's a professional crew. They're drafting well, they're signing guys at the right time. And, you know, does the division now scare me more than it did 6 months ago? Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think Chicago's going to be something to deal with. Green Bay, we'll see what they do with Jordan Love. Minnesota, they got JJ McCarthy there. Justin Jefferson signed his deal. So he's going to be around for a while. So these teams aren't going away, but nothing that the Lions have done has made me think that we're taking a step or two back. If anything, we're getting better, which is what we want to do, which is where we want to be.
You're listening to this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progar and Phil Byrne along with you. Thanks so much for listening all summer and off season long. Much, much, much appreciated. And again, let us be amongst the last to wish anybody that may be falling into this category a happy Father's Day. One other big bit of discussion all off season long is what in the hoot are the Lions going to do about the kicking game? And the Lions, over the course of the last 3 decades plus, have had the kicking game pretty well in good hand, with Jason Hanson holding it down for year after year after year through all the losing and what have you. You always knew that when you needed a big kick made, Jason Hanson was going to go out and get it done for you. But of course, guys can't stay in the league forever, and he knew it was time for him to hang it up, and he hung it up, and the Lions kind of went out in the wilderness a little bit. And heck, I don't even know who was kicking there right after Jason Hanson. That's just how memorable that whole stretch was. And then the Lions decided to go the free agency route and plucked Matt Prater from Denver. And then Prater came and kicked for us for a handful of years. And again, very consistently was always one to make a big kick when you needed him to. He actually seemed more reliable on making the long kicks than he was with making extra points at times. But again, from a consistency standpoint, Prater was real good. And then it got to a point where we weren't in a position to give him the kind of money that he was ideally wanting to extend him. So we let him go, and then it's kind of been back into the wilderness for the Lions kicking game these last few years, going through the likes of Austin Seibert and Riley Patterson and Michael Badgley and whoever else has been brought in. I think they brought a kid from Notre Dame and not too terribly long ago to do some kicking, and just nothing's really worked up until right now. Even the last couple of years, as good as the Lions have been as far as winning games and looking good while doing so, they really haven't done anything to instill confidence in their fan base that they have the kicker position figured out. So they finally have a possible solution to that, as they signed Jake Bates from the hometown team, the Michigan Panthers, the subtenants of Ford Field. They signed him to a 2-year contract, and you may remember that one of the very first kicks he made in the UFL was a 64-yard field goal, and the NFL record that was set by Justin Tucker, oddly enough, inside Ford Field, as many Lions fans remember from a few years ago, only 66 yards. So he's got the leg. There's no doubt about it. We've seen a lot of interesting kickers come into the game that really don't have big kicking backgrounds. He was a soccer guy all his life and didn't even kick an American football until he was probably a junior or senior in high school. So hasn't been kicking for a lot of years, Phil, but the Lions are at least taking a flyer on the kid, and they liked what they've seen with the stint with the Michigan Panthers, and we're going to see what he can do for them.
Okay, real quick. I looked it up. David Akers, 2013. He
That's
officially was the guy after Jason Hanson. Jason Hanson kicked from 1990 to 2012. So very storied career there. Jake Bates made his presence known. He's familiar with Ford Field. He's got the big leg. He's a little bit of an unknown for his transition into the UFL. He didn't have this 4 or 5 year storied career where he was getting 25 plus reps in each year. Um, the impressive thing to me with how this all played out was you had to wait till basically the end of the season or the weekend of the championship game in the UFL to actually sign anyone. And there were multiple offers in there. The Lions launched that 2-year deal to give a little bit more security. He is coming to what we believe to be a contender here. And it's all about getting comfortable. You're going to get the chance to kick inside in this division, multiple times.
You only have to go
And
outside 3 games out of 17 next year.
And it is a little bit of an open race. I don't think this has been sold, with Patterson or anything like that. So, or not Patterson, but
Bagley.
Bagley,
Yep.
yeah. And so I think he's got a good shot. But again, it's going to have to be. Let's see a little bit of consistency going through preseason and training camp before we just, give him the gig.
The only thing that concerns me is that if it goes bad, it can go really, really bad with a kicker. And I
Mm-hmm.
always think back to, I know you've got a connection to Florida State. And I remember when they were doing all that winning back with Jameis Winston and company, won the national championship, Jimbo Fisher as the coach. Their kicker back in that day was Roberto Aguayo. And it seemed
Mm-hmm.
like that guy could not miss.
Yeah.
Was about as automatic as you could possibly ask for out of a college kicker. So much so that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fell so heavily in love with the kid that they drafted him in the 2nd round. And that guy couldn't hit the wide side of a barn. And he flamed out after like maybe 8 games, never kicked again in the NFL, and that was it. So that just goes to show that if it goes bad, it can go bad. Now, the good news, though, is that kickers are a dime a dozen. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't work for Bates, you can always go back to Bagley. You can always go back to Riley Patterson or somebody of a equivalent type of skill level. There's always kickers floating around sitting on their couches. I'm sure you could even pull 52-year-old Matt Stover to come off his couch for a couple of games and kick for you. It's not like it's a death sentence if you're struggling with the kicking game.
Well, let's hope we have the Justin Tucker to Matt Stover in Jason Hanson there, if we're making the comparison between the two there. Mason Crosby, perfect example of it, though. He was very, very consistent, but I want to say it was a game with Aaron Rodgers as the Packers quarterback. I think he missed like 3 field goals in the same game against the Lions, and maybe like an extra point or two. That
Yeah, I think
it
it was
isn't
5 kicks total. Five
yeah,
kicks total between extra points and field goals.
and it isn't so much the physical, but it is totally the mental. And if you think you're going to miss, or you think it's going to be a bad snap, or you think it's going to be a bad hold, you're setting yourself up for failure. So just got to hope that all the good juju that we have with this organization and this franchise and things, that if he's got the leg, we can find the consistency. And listen, I think Dan Campbell's still going to gamble when it comes to 4th down and going for it and this, that, or the other thing. But if we can add a consistent field goal presence, man, oh man, is that going to be awesome.
Because part of it had to have been, and he doesn't want to throw his own guys under the bus, but part of it was probably that he didn't trust the guy
Yeah.
he would have sent out for a long field goal in a big spot.
1,000%, 1,000%. Like if you, again, the odds and the metrics, if they say go for it instead of kicking it, sometimes you got to go for it.
Now, you alluded to this a couple of minutes ago, Phil, and I'm sure this was by no means lost on the Lions organization, that it's definitely a leg up on the competition that Jake Bates has kicked in this building, and he has lots of reps doing so. And granted, you're not getting 65,000 strong each and every game, whether it's on the road or whether it's in Fort Field. But the fact that he has the familiarity there is definitely a huge plus.
Huge plus. I would be kind of curious as to, I didn't know what the setup was for practice for the UFL. Like, do they just practice in Ford Field, do you think, or what?
Either that, or it could be like at like Garden City High School or something like that. Or
Yeah.
like the old, what's the old Farmington? I know the old Farmington Hills Harrison High School has kind of evolved into like a athletic complex of sorts. Like I know a lot of the small schools like Cleary College or U of M Dearborn or Madonna
Mhm.
sometimes play their sporting events on their field. So maybe you got that as a practice facility for the Michigan Panthers. I'm not totally sure, but I don't think they're using the Allen Park complex, and I don't think they're
Yeah.
practicing at Ford
Yeah.
Field every day. It just doesn't make a whole lot of
No.
sense.
No. But anyways, he's coming into a situation where he's familiar with the settings, at least of the backdrop of what a field goal and attempting one is going to look like, over the course of the season and not just a game or two. Um, so, you know, and it also warms my heart that we beat out Green Bay to get him. Like that's a win. That's a
Yep,
win.
he flirted with the Packers and the
So,
Commanders and ultimately decided to sign with the Lions.
yeah. Yeah. So, I think it's something that Lions fans, just kind of maybe somewhat interested in the UFL, saw the story develop, over the course of the spring into the summer. And hey, welcome to the team.
Quick show, but good show, buddy. Let's do it again next week. How's that sound?
Works for me. Works for me.
That's all we got for you on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Join us again next week for way more fun than you can possibly ask for on an early Monday morning for Kneecaps for Breakfast. And once again, a happy Father's Day to all that apply or celebrate. For Phil Bird across the way, Vince Brogar saying good morning, go Lions, forward down the field, over and out.